Hi, Mayada. Good to see you. We're just waiting for some more people to arrive. And I'm also trying to figure out how long the delay is. We're just waiting for some more people to arrive. And I'm also trying to figure out how long the delay is. Just waiting for some more people to arrive. And I'm also trying to figure out how long. Okay. Well, I see now that it's quite a long delay. So, any case, let's move ahead. Who do I see here? I see Mayara. Hello. I see Sophia. I see Mateus Pantufi, Mateus Santana. Good to see you, boys. Good to see you, girls. If you have any questions while I'm giving the class, guys. Oh, I hate this noise. Oh, it's the WhatsApp. Let me turn that off. Well, like you saw, like you heard, you can send me a message on WhatsApp. I'll probably see it faster than on here. And you can email me. I know some of you email me. Hi, Enrique. Some of you email me questions, which is okay too. If you want me to check some of your work before you send it, don't be afraid to mail me. It's not a problem. Hi, Gustavo. You can do this. It's not a problem to email me or send me a message on WhatsApp, and I can help you. So we're going to finish chapter 6 today. We only have about 45 minutes because then it's Miss Summers' class, economics. And next Tuesday, we do not have class. Okay. So the next full class, I believe, is going to be just on the next Thursday. I have to double check. But the next big class that we have, if we finish today, chapter 6, which I think we will, we're going to have another lab class where you can ask me questions about the assignments, quizzes, and things like that. Henry, good work, man. I checked your work and you made the changes that were necessary. So good job, young man. Mr. Leans. Okay, I'm going to share the screen here with you. Can you see the screen? There it is. Kind of funky, right? So as usual, guys, what do we have to do first? Always go to Blackboard. So look, there's Blackboard. Log in. If you're on your home computer, you can save the password so you don't have to do this every time. If you're at school, of course, don't save your passwords on the school computer because then other people will get into your stuff. And then what are we doing? United States history. Okay. And then don't forget that you have those live tutorials. Okay, there's live tutorials happening. In fact, this is taking a while to load, so I can check this page out. Remember, Tuesday and Thursday at 7. Remember, we checked how to see what the time is in Texas. So if it's 5 o'clock in Texas, it's 7 o'clock in Sao Paulo. So if you want to ask the U.S. history teacher any questions about how to upload assignments, maybe exactly what it is, the directions, maybe didn't understand the directions. Of course, you can ask me, you can ask Jeza, but if you want to talk directly to the teacher in Texas, you can write there. And we are here, guys, Unit 4, Becoming a World Power and the Progressive Movement. And you should be taking your own notes. But in case you are not, remember that you can, well, first let's go here. Lesson 4, assignments. Remember this, right? Copy and paste it. I already have mine open. Let's try that again. There it is. And we answered all the way to question number 9. Look at that. We only have 4 more questions left. That's pretty awesome. So we answered all of these questions. We can do a mini review after. And don't forget that you have your notebook. You have your required notes, which we already saw. What were the factors contributing to the U.S. war with Spain? Remember, that's when you go on the ebook on the little corner, right? Reading, click on that. It opens the little graphic organizer. And then there's a second question. Why the U.S. wanted to build a canal through Central America. So when we get to lesson 2, chapter 6, which we're going to finish today, we can talk about Roosevelt and Taft's presidency. If you're not writing your own notes, then you have to do these. So, it's up to you. I think it's easier to write your own notes. But we are right here on the roots of progressivism. We did all of this. And we are on page 10, okay? So chapter 6, lesson 1, page 10. I will write that here so that you get it. We are on chapter 6, lesson 1, page 10 of your ebook. Make that bigger, okay? That's where we are. And we were talking about all the different ways that the progressive movement worked in society, from helping women to helping workers to creating zoning laws. Let me see here. Angela says, I am watching, just can't write anything. Okay, cool. There we go. Oh, I put U.S. government by mistake in the title. All right, so I see Angela's there. Cool, guys. You can write. You can write questions here. All right, so guys, you can write questions in WhatsApp if you're just listening and you can't write inside of YouTube. It's not a problem. So now we're going to move a little bit more. What else the progressives do, which maybe was not so good, is they started the prohibition movement. Prohibition means something is prohibited. It's not allowed. And these guys, they believe that a lot of society's problems were caused by alcohol. Because men drank too much alcohol, then they wouldn't want to work. They would beat their wives. There was a lot of sickness. So they advocated, means to ask and to push for something, that people stop, okay? Or at least have moderate alcohol consumption. So there's a lot of women that were leaders in this movement. In fact, in 1874, they created the Women's Christian Temperance Union, WCTU. Uh, and under his leadership, this movement grew to a national level. There were nearly 250,000 members. There was a lot of evangelicals that were part of this movement, like the Anti-Salon League. Okay. And it wanted to reduce alcohol consumption. But later, it started to go for prohibition, ban the manufacture, transportation, and sale of alcohol. And there was a lot of opposition, mainly from the working class, but the support for prohibition grew until the point where they created a constitutional amendment banning the manufacture, transportation, or sale of alcohol in all of the United States. Oh my goodness, you could not drink in America. And in 1919, they created this amendment and it went into effect in 1920. Guys, this was not a good idea. uh, Basically, it started the mafia. It started illegal people, people doing illegal things to get the alcohol drunk, to get it sold. So if you watch any gangster movies from this time, especially The Godfather, you will get a little bit of a history of this. And eventually they take away this amendment because it was not a very smart amendment. Progressives also fought big business. Okay, they thought that big business needed regulation, and they thought that the government should break up big companies. Okay, so they passed the Sherman Antitrust Act. Okay, a trust is a big, powerful company, and they pushed the government to regulate big companies from abusing their power, such as the ICC, which regulated railroads. And some activists even wanted socialists and socialism. And they said, hey, the government should own and operate industry for the community. They wanted the government to buy these big companies. And even Eugene Debs became a socialist party candidate for president. He got almost 1 million votes. But most Americans believed in free enterprise, so that did not work. So you can see that the progressives, they did a lot of good. Some of it was a little bit crazy, didn't work out too well. But it became an important movement. And remember what I said last class, there were people from the right wing and left wing that were progressives. It's not just a left-wing movement, although today it mostly is. So now we're going to get to Roosevelt. And if you look in your questions, I believe Roosevelt is the next question, right? It said, which approach did Roosevelt take towards regulating big business? But also, if you look on your on your Blackboard, your required note is going to be from lesson 2. So pay attention to this lesson because you are going to get some of the answers for that. Okay, so this is the reading strategies, and we need to answer this right here. Roosevelt and Taft. As you read about Roosevelt and Taft administration, use the headings from the lesson to complete the outline below. So this is the first one, Roosevelt revives the presidency. So let's think of, as we're going through it, think of 3 things that Roosevelt did to revive his presidency. So he became president when he was 42, the youngest guy ever to take office. He believed in social Darwinism. Okay, so he thought that nations were in competition and only the strongest would survive. So maybe that could be the answer already to, to this right here. Okay, what were some of the ways that you can define his presidency? Oh, so many windows open. It's very annoying. Okay, close that window. Yeah, so that's one detail. He believed in social Darwinism. But he was a progressive at home. He believed the government should balance the needs of competing groups of American society on behalf of public interest. And his reform programs were known as the Square Deal. So there you go. You already got a lot of answers. He believes in social Darwinism. He is a progressive. He started a lot of reform programs. He thought that trusts in other large business were efficient and part of why the US was successful, but he also thought monopolies were bad for public interest. He didn't want them to abuse power. So he started with attacking the JP Morgan company. And this company was going to do an exchange of stock that would merge all these different railroad systems, merge just to connect them and create a monopoly. Like they would be the only company working. And farmers thought, hey, this is bad because now, I mean, they control everything. They can control the prices. They can control how much people get paid. This is not good. So Roosevelt told the Attorney General, you need to sue Northern Securities under the Sherman Antitrust Act and stop this trade. Okay? And what happened is that JP Morgan was found that they violated the Sherman Antitrust Act. So Roosevelt became a trust buster, and his popularity grew among Americans, especially farmers and working class. There was also the Northern Securities case, which also showed this different relationship between the federal government and private business. Because in the Constitution, it says that Congress has the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among several states. So, hey, the government has the power to regulate some commerce, but not within a state, not inside a state, but between states. Okay, so from Sao Paulo to Rio, okay, but not inside Sao Paulo. So this became interstate commerce. So in the late 1800s, the court had this very strict interpretation of this commerce power. So, for example, when a sugar company gained control of 98% of the sugar industry, the court ruled that the Sherman Antitrust Act could not be applied because the sugar was manufactured in the states. Okay, this did not involve interstate commerce, even though the sugar was sold across state lines. In the Northern Securities case, the court broadened its interpretation because then JP Morgan was going to own various railroads across various states. So in this case, yeah, it's interstate commerce. In the other one, not. There was the coal strike of 1902. Okay. Roosevelt thought his job was to keep society operating efficiently by helping settle conflicts between different groups and their interests. In the fall of 1902, he put this belief into practice. He worked to help resolve the coal strike between mine owners and 150,000 members of the United Mine Workers, which is a union. They wanted to increase pay, reduce hours. Roosevelt asked the union and the mine owners to accept arbitration, settle a negotiation by an outside party. The union agreed to this. The mine owners refused. And Roosevelt said, if you don't do it, if you don't accept help from a third party, the army is going to run the mines. Remember? Diplomacy, but carry a big stick. president right here. And by doing this, he showed that the federal government could be a broker, could be a mediator, okay, a counselor during disputes, okay? So there's a lot of stuff about Roosevelt which you can put inside of your graphic organizer. I'm on page 5 now. So these two acts mark this change, yet another, between government and business. The U.S. Department of Agriculture was given authority to inspect business operations and ensure that the products were safe and sold to the public. And the FDA was also created. The Federal Drug Administration could also see if people, if the food was made correctly, consumers weren't going to get as sick. So the cost of the law, as with other regulations of the economy, meant the company had to charge more for their products and put labels on everything. So there was a price, okay? But in the end, it was good. I think I skipped a page by mistake, guys. I skipped a lot of pages. Oh, sorry about that. But basically, do this quickly here. Regulating big business. So by the way, if you're thinking of what to put in that chart, I'm giving you a lot of ideas. So how does it revive his economy? Remember, you go here. Well, one answer, I can help you with one. Regulating big business, right? Trust buster. Oh, I hate this keyboard. Trust buster. Okay, so that's one, but we're looking at a whole lot of ways that Theodore became popular again. But although Roosevelt did break up these trusts, he thought a lot of them were good for the economy, in that the cost of antitrust action outweighed the benefits. He agreed that companies formed trust because it was a very efficient way of doing business. And also, if the government always took a company to court, this would make businesses scared to operate. So he saw both sides. And he also realized that the very, very big companies were competing against other companies overseas. Okay. So he could see both sides. Okay. And in some companies, he allowed to continue. In others, no. So he would pick and choose which companies he would go after and which ones he didn't. Roosevelt also was very efficient. He believed the U.S. had to be a world power, okay, in order to prosper. But he also distrusted large concentrations of power and the potential of corruption if things become too powerful. So instead of seeking to break up trust, he proposed a federal agency to investigate corporations and publicize the findings. He felt that this was the most efficient way to prevent big business from abusing its power, is to keep the public informed, okay? So basically, instead of just taking every company to court, he said, I'm going to create an agency that can check and see if the company is doing the right thing, and then I'm going to publicize this. I'm going to make it public. So this is more efficient. It doesn't make companies afraid to open a business because they may have to go to court, but it keeps the people aware of what's happening. So he convinced Congress to create the Department of Commerce and Labor. And his department began investigating U.S. Steel. And the company was afraid that, hey, you're going to give us this big antitrust lawsuit. So they met privately with Roosevelt. They offered to open their files for examination. And in exchange, the DOC of labor, okay, would privately tell the company about any problems that they had to fix. So Roosevelt accepted this. He said, let's do this. I think that this is a nice way to regulate business. You see that this is still the way things operate today. In his belief for regulation, Roosevelt pushed the Hepburn Act, okay? And this would give the ICC more power. This is what regulated the railroads. At first, the railroads were suspicious of the ICC, but eventually they said that, hey, this could work, and we could set the rates and limit competition and still keep our company. By 1905, consumer protection had become a national issue, and the consumers were reading about all these terrible things that were happening with medicine, people that were selling medicine, but it wasn't safe because these medicines were just alcohol, colored water, and sugar. Others had caffeine, opium, cocaine, and other dangerous compounds. So the consumers were like, hey, we need to know what we're buying and also what we're eating. So Dr. W.H. Willey, who was a chemist at the United States Department of Agriculture, he wrote a report about this saying, look, guys, the food is not very safe, okay? And after a novel called The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, it became obvious that the places where they killed the meat was very dirty. There was no regulation. So Roosevelt and Congress created the Meat Inspection Act. And it said that any meat that was sold through interstate commerce had to go through the Agriculture Department standards of cleanliness. And then you had the Pure Food and Drug Act, which prohibited manufacture, sale, and shipment of impure and falsely labeled foods and drugs. So you guys that did health with me last year, which was all of you, notice that now everything has labels. Of course, the price had to go up on things because they had to make sure all the meat was clean, make sure it had the right labels, make sure it got inspected. But hey, are you willing to make that trade, safer meat, for a few labels? Okay. Conservation. So we have the 3 C's, by the way. This is what we call these. The 3 ways that Theodore Roosevelt was helping to reform the country, the 3 C's. Okay, so the first one, if you go here, you put Theodore Roosevelt 3 C's. We just talked about the first one. He went after corporations, and now he's going to go after consumer protection and conservation. Those are the 3 C's. So what is conservation? It means keeping the environment nice. I don't know if you notice, now that everybody's in their house, there's a lot less pollution. The sky looks beautiful, okay? I took a picture yesterday of the sky in front of my house. It was beautiful. So Theodore Roosevelt said, hey, we need to conserve the environment, okay? He loved to go outside. He was a hunter, but he was also a conservative, I guess it would be a conservatist, conservationalist. Conservationalist. That's the word I'm looking for. He was a conservationalist, and or conservationist. Anyway, so he liked to protect the trees, protect the grass, protect the water, protect everything. He wanted to go out to the West where there wasn't a lot of water for these people. So he created this act, the Newlands Reclamation Act, which authorized federal funds from public land sales to pay for irrigation and land development projects. And the federal government began to transform the West. Roosevelt also protected a lot of the nation's forests. And he started the U.S. Forest Service, which still exists today, with Smokey the Bear. As progressives, Roosevelt and Pinchot, which was the guy he was working with, believed that trained experts in forestry and resource management should manage the national forest. So they started to get people out there in the forest to protect it. So because of Roosevelt, we had more than 100 million acres of protected national forest, and he established 5 new national parks and 51 federal wildlife reserves. So he was definitely a guy big on conservation, which is a reason why a lot of people love Teddy Roosevelt. He's considered one of the great presidents, okay? And Roosevelt's legacy. Roosevelt changed the role of the federal government. He used his power in the White House to present his views, calling it bully pulpit. And he tried to convince Americans that, listen, this is what we have to do. And you see that to this day, presidents act this way. They use the power that they have in the White House to influence voters, influence laws, because they think that this is the right thing for America. So there, it just kind of repeats a lot of the different things that he did, which is on page 7. Now let's talk about Taft. So remember, in that little graphic organizer that we have to do, we have to put the heading. So there's a heading, how the President Taft's beliefs differ from the progressives' beliefs. And we can answer that. Did we get the answer to this question? Which approach did Roosevelt take towards regulating business? I think we did. If you didn't get it and you have a question, you can ask me later. But we did talk about that, because remember, he could either take them to court every single time, or he could do something else, which is what he did. Okay, so think about that. So this is the next question for the graphic organizer and the assignment. We're going to talk about President Taft very quickly. And so Taft is the president after Roosevelt. He believed in high tariffs, limited competition. And he thought that this hurt consumers and protected trusts. But Roosevelt said, stay away from tariff reform because it's going to divide the Republican Party. But Taft didn't listen and did divide the progressives, who wanted less tariffs, and the conservatives who wanted to maintain high tariffs. Remember, a tariff is a tax. And as these negotiations went on and on and on, Taft's support for tariff reduction did not, okay? So eventually he signed into law this Payne-Aldrich tariff, but it didn't really cut a lot of tariffs. So this could be the answer to A, right here, right? His different views on tariffs. And then not a lot about Taft, because he's not considered a great president. And how else did Taft get progressives angry. He replaced Roosevelt's Secretary of the Interior with this guy named Ballinger. And Garfield was an aggressive conservationist, but Ballinger was a conservative corporate lawyer. And Ballinger tried to open a lot of lands to private development. So, of course, this made a lot of people angry. And he was accused of trying to give a lot of valuable land in Alaska to private business. So, not a good choice. And let me see here. Taft fired Pinchot for insubordination or disobedience. This was the guy that was trying to investigate Ballinger. The congressional investigation cleared Ballinger. Okay. So by the second of Taft's terms in office, a lot of Americans were frustrated with him. And the Democrats won all across America during the congressional elections. Democrats took the majority of the House. Democrats and progressive Republicans gained control of the Senate from conservative Republicans. So conservative Republicans are going away. First time in a long time, guys, because remember, the Democrats were blamed for the Civil War. So Americans didn't really trust Democrats very much. So we have had a lot of Republicans, one after the other, for quite some time. So what did Taft achieve? Okay, he had a few successes. Taft brought a lot of antitrust cases in the 4 years that he was president. And also he pursued progressive policies. He established the Children's Bureau, which was against child labor, because that was a big problem at the time. And Taft was a conservationist, even though he had this little controversy with his friend Ballinger, who supposedly wanted to sell private land. He set up the Bureau of Mines to monitor mining activity. He expanded the national forest. He protected water power sites from private development. And although people say he went against progressives, Roosevelt refused to criticize him. Okay. He soon became impatient. In 1907, while president, Roosevelt had approved the purchase of the Tennessee Coal and Iron Company by U.S. Steel. In October 1911, Taft declared that the deal violated the Sherman Antitrust Act. So Roosevelt thought, hey, Taft, you're destroying business by doing this, okay? So in 1911, Roosevelt finally did criticize Taft for his decision. And it was only a matter of time before progressives convinced Roosevelt to re-enter politics. And Roosevelt tried to run for president again to replace Taft as the Republican nominee. And that's where we're going to stop now, because we have a short class today. In the next class, we will finish this chapter 6, which is right here, lesson 3. Okay. It's a short one. And then we will have a lab class. So again, you want to answer lesson 2. Roosevelt, 1 second, guys. Let me make sure I'm in the right thing here. Roosevelt revives the presidency. Okay. But where's the second one? Give me a second, because I want to make sure you have all 3 all three things here. I only saw two. Western land developments, tax reforms. Use headings from the lesson to complete the outline. Okay, I guess you can use more than one. So I would do this. Maybe I would put Taft as number 3. And use one of these in the middle. I thought that they would have more than 2, because he did revive his presidency. And then maybe use one of these headings, regulating big business, or let's see. Conservation. Okay, so use one of these other headings in the middle. If you're confused about that, just let me know, and I can help you with it. And this question we definitely answered. That's an easy question to answer. Now, guys, if you check on WhatsApp, I believe Miss Summer sent the link. Oh, she just erased it for Skype. And what do you believe were Progressive's most important success and biggest failure? Well, we still have more of Progressives, so don't answer that yet. And then we can talk about the election of 1912. Next class, I believe, will be next Thursday. Okay, you got to check with Jayza. We will finish this. If you got a little confused by this graphic organizer, don't worry, I can help you with it. But basically, find another heading, because I only thought, I thought there was going to be 1, 2, 3, how we did it, but maybe the last one is here, and you can find something else about Roosevelt right here. Okay? And that's it for today. It's a short class. But now you have to all go find Miss Summer. Okay? And I will see you guys on Thursday. And we will finish. Oh, there you go. So 45 minutes again. Okay, so we were going to have another short class next Thursday, which will give us enough time to finish this chapter, answer the assignment questions, and upload it to Blackboard. Okay, and then the next time we have a long class, we will do a lab class where we will just do more quizzes, answer more questions, and get everything settled that way. All right, guys, have a good holiday. Let me put myself on the screen while I'm talking to you. Hey, so guys, have a good holiday. Okay. Continue catching up on your quizzes. I saw a lot of you sent me the historical documents. I know that was a very hard assignment. It was the first one. It was a little confusing, even for me to understand. So I'm glad we got that out of the way. And I see a lot of people sent it to me and now uploaded it to Blackboard. So that's awesome. But now we understand how it works, right? That was in the beginning. It was a little confusing. Now it's all cool. So continue sending your assignments. Send it to me if you want to, and that's it. So go to Miss Summer's class. She just sent an invitation on Zoom. Okay? Bye, guys. Go to Miss Summer. I'll see you next week. Oops. Bye.